Welcome to Flywheel Leadership. I'm Graham Peely, and I'm joined by Neill Marshall and Kurt Mosley of HealthSearch Partners, a healthcare specialized executive recruitment firm. We're going to walk through their journey and discuss how it brought them here today. Neill and Kurt, tell us about you and your firm.
Sure, Graham, and thanks for having us. We appreciate it. My name's Neill Marshall. Health Search Partners is an executive search firm. We specialize in attracting leaders for hospitals and health systems. Been doing this for about 30 years. Glad to be here.
And Graham, thanks for having us. My name's Kurt Mosley. I'm the association practice leader at HealthSearch Partners, and I develop our relationships with our state hospital associations, state medical societies, and garner those endorsements through the work we do through the states and through the nation. And that's my role. And good to be here.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining. I really love the way HealthSearch Partners has set up and with 30 years of experience, that's very natural, but with really setting up, you're intentional about what you do, and you're intentional about who you serve and how that looks. And that goes a long way. Could you tell me a little bit about what it looks like in those first 90 days of an outside executive's new assignment when they're stepping into an organization?
Sure. Yeah, and most folks, I think, going into a new assignment want to make an impact. They want to make changes. Everybody's been talking to them about all the things that are wrong, and they want to go do all those things, right? And what we've discovered through I've interviewed 10,000 hospital executives, right? And I've seen places where the right guy, the right person was in the right organization at the right time and still failed. And in looking at that, we just discovered that, you know what, the first 90 days needs to be about building trust, building that flywheel that you call, right? Building the momentum, doing not huge strategic things, but doing small intentional acts that get the flywheel going. Because if you don't, you're going to spend the next 3 years trying to fix all the problems that you caused in the first 90 days.
So you mentioned those smaller acts, and I think you'd referenced those before as symbolic acts in some way. Could you tell us like some examples of what that is, or any stories that come to mind?
Sure. I think both Kurt and I probably have stories. I'll go back to the first, and back the symbolic act. It's something that somebody does that demonstrates something to the organization. It's not an email. It's not a big pronouncement on the stage. It's actions that speak really louder than words, right? And so the best one that I can think of that I remember was my very first job. I was an executive trainee for an organization, and there were about 5 of us, a very hard-charging young people, and they fired our CEO. And so our new CEO came in, and we were all looking out the window when he drove into the parking lot, right? And he gets out of the car and he walks through the parking lot and he picks up garbage. Never says a word, walks into the warehouse, throws the garbage away, and then comes in. But what he demonstrated to us was a new sheriff was in town. We were going to do things differently. And we were going to start with, there wasn't going to be garbage in the parking lot. And interestingly enough, that's the last day he ever picked up garbage. Because from then on, everybody showed up 15 minutes early, and we walked the parking lot to make sure that he didn't have to pick up the garbage. And so again, it wasn't a big pronouncement. It wasn't he just showed us in a very simple way. And Kurt?
Yeah, I think that one of our CEOs we interviewed, Richard Parks, he ran Covenant in Lubbock for many years. And when Neill and I were talking, and it was really the creation of the 90-day series is sort of our starting point. And he said, yeah, when I moved, his wife stayed home and got the kids completed with school and got the house sold. But when he said, I moved into the hospital, and we were like, okay, everybody works hard, everybody works 24/7. He goes, no, you guys don't understand. He goes, I moved into the hospital. And that was a symbolic act in itself, but it kind of moved on from there, where the first night he woke up, and I think you all know that there's residency dorms in the hospital. And he woke up, and one of the doctors said, who are you? And he said, I'm the new CEO. And he said, well, how'd you guys sleep? The first thing that, older people say, how'd you sleep? And one doctor said, it was horrible. These mattresses stink. So he said, I can fix that. So he calls the materials manager. They had like 5 pickups, and they went to Costco, got all new mattresses, and got them installed that day. And for the rest of his career, people remembered that. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't big, but it was symbolic. It was like, I feel your pain, I get it, and I fixed it. And it was something he could fix in that first 90 days, and that's important. Is what you want to do in that first 90 days, is it solvable? Is it fixable? And will it have an impact?
Love those stories. Those to me are what stand out as walking the walk, right? Not just telling people what you're going to do or how things should be done, directing with orders, but actually showing through action who you are and how you expect others to show up through action. I think that's really powerful stuff.
Actually, Graham, I've got one more, if you don't mind, because I just
please.
thought of it. So we had a CEO in healthcare today. The big push is our people are the most important thing, because if you can retain and attract your people, your nurses, especially, but your employees, you're going to win, because you can't pay more, right? And this guy came in and he was espousing our people are the most important thing. Our people are the most important thing. Pulled up to the hospital the first day, and his parking spot was right next to the hospital. And he looked down, and it was the whole executive team had reserved parking, right? He said, so he walks into the hospital, he walks into his first meeting with his executive team, and he said, folks, I've said that our people are the most important thing. Is that correct? And everybody said, yes, sir. That is absolutely the message we want to give, and that's what we're going to do. And he said, okay, well, here's the first thing that we're going to do. There is no more executive parking. We park in the back lot farther away than our employees do. And we're going to use the executive parking now for all the employees of the month of the different departments. And so our best employees get to park right next to the hospital. And they were like, oh, and he said, then when we're walking through the parking lot every single morning, we're going to make sure that we're greeting our employees and we're saying hello, and we're demonstrating to them that they are the most important thing. We're not going to say a word except to introduce ourselves, to say hi to them, but we're going to demonstrate to them that they are the most important.
Thanks for sharing, Neill. Appreciate that. Neill, could you walk us through, how did you come up with HealthSearch Partners? What were the kind of steps that led you to this, and what it's become today?
Sure. Going back, I was with one of the largest executive search firms in the country, specializing in healthcare. And after about, 10 or 12 years of that, I got tired of getting in trouble. And I got in trouble for creating new things, I'll tell you the straw that broke the camel's back, and this is dating me, but I got quoted on the front page of USA Today. Positive quote. The organization was in it, and the CEO of my organization's assistant, who was responsible for stuff like that, called and chewed me up one side and down the other, because she thought the CEO ought to be in there, not me. Well, I was the one that got the call. But I knew then that I needed to be on my own. So I went on my own, did that for 12 years, and then got with another partner. We formed a company called Sutherland Partners, and then as during the Walmartization of healthcare, it used to be all independent, not-for-profits all over the place. But as the systems got bigger and bigger and bigger, right, we needed to be bigger in order to be relevant. And so 3 boutique firms, ours and 2 others, came together. We wanted to be big enough to be relevant, but small enough that we didn't have some of the off-limits issues and things like that with the big firms. And so that's why we just formed HealthSearch Partners.
What's the inspiring the most inspiring aspect of the work you do?
I think there's the the ability to help organizations that are really doing good. You know, I mean, we're talking about hospitals here. All of us will spend time in a hospital in our lives, and we all want to have the absolute best experience we possibly can. But I think it's going in a troubled situation, listening to what they want, convincing them of certain things that they need to be convinced of, helping them take their blinders off, um, and then finding the right person for them at that right point in time. And this is the best one is when you convince them to see somebody that they didn't want to see, and you say, "Look, I'm willing to put my reputation on it. I'm willing to pay for it." And that ends up being somebody that stays 20 years and has a great run and does great things for not only the organization but the community and the health of the community.
Thanks for
And I
sharing, Neill.
think,
Go ahead, Kurt.
no, Grant, I think that for me, it's healthcare is so complex right now. I mean, it's if everybody said it changed. What is it, like one dog year for every or 7 dog years for every human year since COVID? It's changed dramatically, and finding the right leader is key. I mean, years ago I used to do this speech. It was called "Doctors Are from Mars, Administrators Are from Venus," and it was about the whole clash. But now hospitals have to deal with creating a partnership with the physicians, a partnership with the nurses, partnership with dietitians, and to see a person go in and arrange that, coordinate that. And the ultimate goal is to take care of the patients in the community. When that works, we feel good because it's all about patients. It's not, we're all going to be patients one day, as Neill said. And it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, but it has to do with patient care. And to see that succeed is heartwarming to me and makes me. That's why I come to work every day.
Thanks, Kurt. Staying with you, Kurt, on HealthSearch Partners and how you engage with clients. I would love to hear what's kind of the secret sauce up front with how you walk through the process with a client where it's, hey, we have a need, or even before that, and how we actually understand the culture of the hospital or healthcare system and things of that nature. And then how does that result in a successful hire that ends up being retained, it gets through the successful 90 days and so on?
Well, I think first of all, it's listening. It's not coming in and talking about our services. It's listening to what they're looking for. Number one, understanding the candidate they're looking for, understanding the parameters, and as you said, Graham, asking questions about the culture. I mean, we have to understand that before we can even try to pair anybody with them. Our belief also is, as we go through the process and find what candidate they're looking for and narrow those candidate parameters down, everything we do up front, all the due diligence, our philosophy, and we express this to our clients, is not, our job's not done when that candidate's placed. It's only half over. Not to disparage anybody else in the search industry, ours is different. At day one, we want to make sure that first 90 days is successful. So we coach the board, we coach the new CEO on coming in and what to do and earning the right, if you will, to change the culture only after you learn what the culture is. Earn the right to make those decisions after you build trust during that time. Understanding that first 90 days, don't move too fast. Listen more than you act. Because again, that first 90 days, nobody's expecting you to be perfect, Graham. They're expecting to trust you.
What separates the leaders who consistently succeed from those that either struggle or stall out? What that could be either candidates you place or client leaders you've worked with. What do you see consistently on what works versus what doesn't?
And that I tell you what, if I could answer that question, Graham, that might be a book and a podcast series, and
No doubt.
that's the special sauce, right? Um, I don't know. Um, uh, I can pick specific things. things like being intentional, okay? Planning what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, right? You don't just show up and start it. It's being really intentional, especially early on. Um, it's it's bringing a group together, um, and leading them in a direction, and getting everybody on board. Um, it's a lot of times I'll say to clients, look, I can't tell you what they've got. They just got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you need to meet them, and because I can't tell you what it is, but they got it.
That right there. It's funny you mentioned that, Neill. I was doing some thinking on a article I was writing, and it came across my mind on how do you describe it? You know, Kurt. But were you going to say something as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's hard to define, but we always caution our candidates to, in the first 90 days, that behavior really matters more than words. Make sure that your audio matches your visual. There's a saying out there, it's hard to talk your way out of something you behaved yourself into. And for our leaders that get it, they understand at day one that they're on stage, that people are looking at their behaviors, not the edicts, not the emails they send out, not the posters they put up in the facility. It's what their behavior is. And so make sure that behavior mimics what you're trying to be as a leader. And that behavior sometimes is the start of creation of trust, and people just want to trust you.
You said something really powerful there, Kurt, when it comes to as a leader, you are on stage. Whether you want to be, whether you think you are or not, inside the company and outside the company, people are looking at you based on the role you're in and how you show up. And I think that's a really interesting way to frame it up for leaders, that especially the more humble and the more the less power they may think they have, they actually have way more than they think. Now, if it's on the other end of the spectrum, it may be a little different, where they think they have all the power in the world. But especially those humble leaders that are really leading with that servant mindset, the impact that when you do something, say something, when you're showing people the way of the company or the way you think, it makes an impact. You do have a weight, a certain weight that, really impacts people, good or bad, depending on the situation. And I think that's something really important to think about, is you're on stage, like you are, and not in a performative way, but you're on stage showing people who you really are.
Every single minute. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we do, now this isn't the leader, this is us, when we go into a community, right? And even on the airplane, when we're flying, if we're flying into the community, we're on stage, because you don't know who's on the airplane. You could have a board member on the airplane. When we land, we're on stage at the hotel. We're on stage when we park our car, walking through the hospital. And as a matter of fact, I'll never forget, I was with one of my old mentors, and we came out of a meeting in the hospital, and we're walking towards our car, and I started to say something, and he just looked at me and he went, and we kept walking. And even in the car, I wasn't, until we were out of the parking lot, we couldn't say anything. But he was demonstrating to me that, hey, you're on stage, especially in these small towns, you're on stage, and everything that you do is you're on stage.
I remember one time, Graham, I was in the elevator in the hospital and didn't know who was on the elevator, and I heard one of the people say, "I guess we're meeting with these headhunters in 20 minutes." And I didn't say a word. And then when I walked into the boardroom, the one gentleman looked at me and he smiled and gave me a thumbs up. And I said, I kind of nodded my head. I said, "I'm the guy." It was just kind of funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's great. And you're right. You never know who is in your presence, and you never know who is going to be that person that you meet down the road as well. And I think that's one of the powerful things about, it's a very simple thing, but I think it's a lost art sometimes when it comes to really getting back to screening candidates at that deep level is, let's go grab a coffee or grab lunch and see how that candidate actually acts in front of, a server at a restaurant or whatever the case may be, and seeing, how do they treat people? How do they actually show up? And does that align with the culture that you're really wanting to bring in, especially the more senior they are, because that's what your team's going to start acting like or be dealing with depending on how they act, right?
Right.
I absolutely agree. And for your listeners, as they're going through, let's say a career progression, and they're maybe interviewing for jobs or whatever. I had one of the top candidates for a position, very, very, very senior in supply chain, right? So his job was to help the organization save money. So when he went out to visit the organization with he and his wife, they went out to dinner. And they spent $600 at dinner. Sent me the receipt, and I my head exploded. $100 for dinner, and we paid it. Uh, but the client needed to know that this guy thought that it was okay to spend $600 at dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't New York City either.
Right. Right. Uh, would love to understand how you look at when a leader knows that they should move on. Like when it's time, like if you're talking with, say you're talking with a candidate and they're looking to make a move, and it's that point, at least in their eyes, where they're thinking, hey, I need to start looking. How do you coach them through that? How do you look at it from your lens on when is it time to start looking or making a move or exiting an organization because your time is up for whatever reason?
Yeah, that's a very complex. Graham, you've asked some of the toughest questions. I don't know that there is an answer. I'll tell you this: um, if you start feeling it, I mean, sometimes your heart will tell you, even though your head says, "Hey, I need to stay 2 more years." Sometimes your heart's going to be telling you, you know what? And the other thing is that the higher the level you are in an organization, let's say at that executive level, right? um, you need to actually start looking a year or two before you actually need to move, because the thing that you don't want to do is outstay your welcome and end up having them replace you, and then you're on the beach for a year or two waiting for the next opportunity. Because as I tell people, when we started our careers, there were millions of jobs that we could have had, right? We were on the street level. But as you climb the mountain, when you're on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, there aren't a whole lot of, there's only seven other mountains, the seven sisters or eight sisters or what, there's only seven other places for you to go, right? And so as you advance, there are less and less opportunities, which means it takes longer, takes a little bit more work. Um, uh, but yeah, when you start feeling it, you probably should have started about a year before.
I was talking to a client, the same thing when he said, I need to move on. And I said, how do you know? And he'd been in his career for 8 years, I think. And I said, how do you know you need to move on? He goes, Kurt, I looked and reflected on what I did last year. And then I went back to year one of my 8 years. And he goes, and I looked at some of the things that I do now that I don't do now that I did 8 years ago. And he said, it's time for me to move on. He was changing his leadership. His heart wasn't in it. He said, I changed my leadership style from the first year to now, and I think it's time for me to move on. And he didn't point out anything specific, but he just said, the way that I led in my first year was very different from year 8, and I felt it was time to move on. And that's what he said, gave him the road sign, if you will, that he needed to move on.
Certainly. How do we look at technology now? Like within 30 years of HealthSearch Partners, right? In this business, things have changed quite a bit.
Huh.
So,
Huh.
and
Huh.
I know that's an understatement.
Literally the understatement of
Yeah.
the century, right?
So how do you work with executives that, in organizations on either side, I guess, of the coin, right? Where some organizations, some executives are way behind in their understanding of technology, their willingness or ability to adapt and adopt, frankly, right? How do you kind of navigate that in your type of service when you're working on with both sides?
Yeah. Um, a complex question because listen, I remember when I would be dealing with a CEO and their assistant printed out their emails and handed them to them. And I'd be like, listen, you're going to be responsible for buying $100 million IT system. Okay. You can't be having your assistant print out your emails.
Right.
Um, and actually in my own organization, we had, if you sent somebody an email and when they read it, you got a response, right? One of my partners, I had sent him an email and I got a response 18 months later that he had read it. 18 months it took him to read an email versus today. I think everybody is so much more facile. Okay. I think probably the iPhone in '07 changed everything, but we don't get that pushback as much anymore. Now they might not be able to understand all the nuances of it, and they might need to have younger people around who, oh, it's like my own son. I'm pretty facile with IT, right? Um, but my son is on a different level and he talks a different language. And sometimes I'll have to say to him, all right, just explain it to me like I'm a 2 year old, right?
Hmm.
But I'm just not seeing the pushback that we saw way back when today because I think everybody understands that, you know what? Because they've seen organizations and people flame out because they didn't understand IT and they didn't get facile with it and they didn't implement it. And today, I mean, it's just so much a part of our lives that I just don't see it.
It is a different world. Just a note for your listeners. When I'm first interviewing somebody, I'll set up a Zoom call, and if they send me back an email saying I'm not camera ready, then they're not ready to listen about this opportunity. And that's just the Zoom environment we're in, Graham. I mean, it shows if they want to be seen, want to establish that relationship because it's so hard now because we've changed from the face to face to Zoom, and you need every opportunity to see that person's face, how they react, how their head moves. So that's just one thing that we do get pushback. Somebody says, "Let's make the next one. I'm not camera ready." Well, we'll talk when you're camera ready. So
Right. Right. That's good. So I'll start with you, Kurt. What's one thing you've changed your mind on over your life or your career?
one thing I've changed my the more that I know, the less I know. I mean, it's that old thing from the Rounders movie. I love that where he said, "If you don't understand who the chump at the table is, it's you." You know, but just that I have so much to learn, and I'm never stopping to learn because every rock I turn over, there's something else I need to learn. So I think that's something that hit me early on because when you're young and you're sharp and you get good grades in college, you think like, well, you got it made. But again, you never stop learning. And my father told me this one time. He said, "Kurt, don't worry." He said, "If you don't ever lose in life, you learn."
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Neill, any thoughts to add there?
Yeah, I would say that coming back to kind of this 90 days thing, I used to think that finding the right person for the right organization at the right time was my job. And I've changed that to my job is a long tenure. And so I need to help them find the right person for the right position at the right time and then help that person succeed in that first year. Because if they succeed in the first year, then that rolls into, usually a nice 4 or 5, 8 year tenure.
Certainly. Anything else that you would like to touch on that we haven't covered yet today?
Um, no, I just think that very few people, when they're starting a new position, spend enough time planning out what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. You know, they spend a lot of time finding the job. They spend a lot of time interviewing. And then once they have it, they think, hey, I'm just going to show up and then I'm going to work. Right. But I think that really spending some time in intentionality and knowing the type of tone you're going to set and looking at symbolic acts and those type of things, I think that that will go a long way in helping you be successful in your next role.
And I think old saying I like to use from John Wooden, UCLA basketball coach, where he said, "Be quick but don't hurry." And people say, "How does that translate into the first 90 days?" Well, it's moving at a pace that's comfortable for you, Graham. Not feeling the pressure to make a move before you understand it. Not changing the culture before you understand what culture is in a hospital and how it was developed, and you're not necessarily slowing down. You're sequencing your speed. So in that first 90 days, in some cases, we caution our candidates it's better not to make a move than to make the wrong move during that first 90 days. So again, act quickly to learn, but move deliberately to change.
Urgency, but not rushing, right? Yeah, for sure. That's good advice. How about on the organizational side? You know, if I'm looking to hire an executive or I'm a board hiring the CEO, like what advice do you have for the organizations?
Yeah, I think along the same lines. Don't expect a new person to come in and uh, throw a strategic plan down in 30 days and start making huge moves that are going to change the world. Again, kind of back to your flywheel concept. I mean, they really do need to do things that build momentum, and so it's gonna look like you're not. It's kind of like you're building a house. When by the time the foundation is down, right? That might take 90 days, right? But then after that, everything goes, and you can see things happening. But let them have the time that they need to build the relationships, to set the tone, to move the organization along. Have some patience.
And I was getting feedback from a candidate we placed, Graham, and he said he was doing rounds and he got down to the nurse's station and introduced himself, and they go, "Oh, you're the new CEO?" And he said, "Yes." And he goes, "I read through your strategic plan." And he goes, "Oh, I understand." And she said, "We don't need a new strategic plan. Our IV systems need to be replaced." So he said, "I get it. That's something I can do right away." And there was no fanfare. It was just action. It was something that was actionable. And he went to the board and they said, "Yes, we've heard about that. Do it today." And it was something that meant a lot to the nurses for the rest of his career. You know, she said, "We don't need a new strategic plan. We need new IVs." So, I mean, new IV delivery systems. So those are things that I think resonate for the rest of your career, and that you've listened and you act on it. It's something you can act on. It's a symbolic act, but you can take care of it. You know, so many people say, "Well, can you address this?" Well, not in 90 days. It's something I have to analyze. I can't do it before I understand. I can't fix something unless I know why it was.
You're hitting on something that I think is a really important theme coming out of this conversation is, you know, when it comes to all these things you can do as a leader, sometimes we need to get back to the basics and talk to the people, right? Like actually listen to them. And I think sometimes that it seems so basic, but it gets missed. Like, are we listening to the people? Doesn't mean you have to do everything they say, but are you hearing what's really going on in the organization versus, you know, that office you're sitting in, right? That being on the floor, talking with the people, or the virtual floor if it's a remote company, like really understanding what's going on versus just your lens. That's a really important point.
Yeah, I mean, I had a CEO. He ran Beaumont Hospital up in Detroit. I mean, like top quartile in every indicator, financial, quality. I mean, unbelievable hospital. And I'm always Graham. I'm always asking for the big, right? Give me the big move. Give me the big thing, right? Give me the big one. And he said, Neill, he said, it isn't a big one. What it is it's 100 small ones that you have to allow your people to do, because frankly, they know what to do more than you do. So you need to give them the opportunity and the ability to make those moves, and 100 small ones will end up making a big impact.
And in that first 90 days, Graham, if I can add, earned authority is the credibility you build through those actions. It's not your title. You have the title. You don't have to prove it. In the first 90 days, people, like I said, people aren't listening to what you say. They're watching what you do.
Well said. So what's next for HealthSearch Partners? What's the rest of 2026 look like or beyond?
Well, we're going to continue to do executive searches, right? With regards to the 90-day program, we've spent the last year, 18 months, focused on the stories of the people. We're now kind of putting a step-by-step action plan together that will roll out in a series of articles that will probably end up being a book, right? Specifically focused on healthcare leaders. And then we're going to try and figure out how to implement some AI things around that.
Very good. What do you want people you've worked with to say about the impact you've had on them? I'll let you both answer this question. Would love to hear your perspective on either side.
I would say that all I want them to say is that I left it better than it was.
I like that.
If I had a superpower, I think it's helping leaders earn trust quickly in the moments that matter most in that first 90 days. That's what I would say, and giving them honest, accurate, and actionable feedback during that time.
Very good. Neill Marshall and Kurt Mosley of HealthSearch Partners, thank you for joining Flywheel Leadership. We appreciate you sharing today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Good to be here. Thank you again for having us, Graham.
Of course. Take care. Thank you.